Hey, Julian Franklin. I wanted to share with you today the story of Go Wild. This is a show that I wrote several years ago, and it's an interesting program that I have because it has a couple of different versions that you might like. So there's two different versions. One of them is endorsed by the National Science Center out of Augusta, Georgia. It's the program that we do where the focus is on the scientific process and animals. So we talk about animals. I kind of like the idea of the fact that we have lots of amazing animals here in Texas, that people sometimes think that all these amazing exotic animals from other countries, for example, we could go to Australia and find a kangaroo or a koala where they have pouches where they carry their babies. But of course we have possums right here in Texas. They're ubiquitous. We see them all the time. And so these possums are marsupials, just like kangaroos and wallabies. And so the kids are sort of enamored by the fact that you don't have to go to Australia to see a marsupial. We have marsupials right in our own backyard. We talk about animals that can do magic tricks by changing, for example, tadpoles that change into frogs and caterpillars that change into butterflies. And we're so accustomed to that we sort of dismiss it. But in fact, this is really a quite magical concept. And so we talk about this process, this part of the life cycle of these animals, this metamorphosis process that they go through. We talk about animals. We talk, of course, about the scientific process, or sometimes called the scientific method. And so we're addressed to both of these types of nomenclature based on the same concept, which is this idea that we might have a little bit of study which might spark a question in our mind, and then we formulate a hypothesis, what we think might be the answer, and then we use that hypothesis to direct our learning, self-directed learning, through a sort of a maybe some sort of an experiment. In fact, we'll actually do an experiment during the course of the show where we reenact one of Aesop's fables, the story of the crow and the pitcher, and where we actually reenact this idea. Then there's another version of the show where it's very popular around Earth Day, where we talk about recycling. So instead of using the scientific process, instead of having the experiment in the show, although those concepts are still addressed through the course of the show, but instead of that being the primary focus, we'll also be talking about, or rather we'll be talking about this idea of recycling and different ways that we can recycle, and how we can, little things that any one of your students could engage in, just little bitty steps, and how all together we can all work. Look, we can't get rid of landfills. We need landfills. Nobody wants to burn trash in their backyard. That would create a bigger problem. But when we have these landfills, we all can agree that the longer these landfills last, the longer that it takes for them to fill up, the greater the time between the incidents of when we start a new landfill and when we have to start another landfill. That's good for all of us. And so by reducing the amount of garbage that we create, by reducing the amount of waste, then everybody benefits. And so we've got these two different shows. So anytime that you're going to think about the Go Wild show, it's a fantastic show, either version, but make sure that you specify whether you want the scientific process version or whether you'd like the recycling version. The default is the scientific process version. It's a fantastic show and it really ties into the curriculum well. But if you want the recycling show, be sure to ask for that. But either one of those shows, you'll love it. Go Wild.